Okay, welcome everybody to the full council meeting of Mumbles Community Council for Tuesday, 13th of July, 2021. Thank you all for coming on this beautiful evening. I know it's quite warm and sultry out there. So we've got quite a full agenda tonight. So I would ask councillors to please try and stick to the agenda items. And let's not try to digress too much, because I feel that otherwise we're going to be really struggling to get through this agenda tonight. And I'm sure all of us would like to have some sort of not too late finish, as it were. So if I go on straight on to point one, which is apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from Councillor Adam Gilbert. He's on lifeboat duty tonight.
Okay, so it's just Adam.
Indeed.
Okay. Any declarations of interest?
Yep.
Rob Marshall?
Yeah, judicial review, one of the signatures is a friend of mine.
Okay, thank you for that. Steve? Is that noted?
It is, Chair.
Thank you very much. Minutes of the monthly meeting held on 8th of June 2021. Have anybody got any points that they want to raise in relation to these minutes? If not, then can I propose them that they're accepted as true and honest record of the meeting on the 8th of June? Propose that. Carrie, second that. Somebody? Sarah, okay. So then if we move on to item 4, the clerk's report.
Yeah, Chair, I was going to do a brief verbal report, but I'll send something out by email so we can get on with the meeting.
Okay, well, I've written a shorter report this month, but just to sort of sum up a few of the things that have gone on. So this is the Chair's report. I'm pleased to report on Monday, the 5th of July, Mumbles Community Council hosted a very successful event to commemorate NHS Social Care and Frontline Workers Day at the Ostream in Mumbles. We're very fortunate, for although the day was quite showery, during the actual ceremony, the sun shone, and guests were entertained by a brass quintet playing topical tunes such as Somewhere Over the Rainbow. We were honoured to be joined during the event by Her Majesty the Lord Lieutenant of West Glamorgan, the High Sheriff of West Glamorgan, and the Lord Mayor of Swansea. And there was also a wide range of guests representing the health and emergency services, and generally there was very good representation from across our community. During the ceremony, the dignitaries laid wreaths and Her Majesty Lord Lieutenant unveiled a plaque in respect of those who died during the pandemic. This was then followed by a 2-minute silence at 11 AM. As part of the event, I made a speech where I stated how the pandemic had highlighted the importance of the everyday heroes in the health and social care and service industries, and also to remember those who have sadly lost their lives due to this horrendous pandemic, and the sorrow and pain that this has caused their friends and loved ones. Following my speech, Rebecca outlined how MCC had responded to the pandemic and highlighted the pride we felt as a community council in how local people had volunteered and responded. Yeah. On a more disappointing note, on July the 8th, the High Court quashed the decision made by the Cabinet of City and County Council to transfer the Clongdero site to MCC in order for the skateboard project to proceed. This is a disappointing outcome, as it seems inevitable that this decision will result in further delays through no fault of our own on a project that we have put a lot of time, effort and resources into, and which we know is eagerly anticipated and wanted by many Mumbles in the surrounding area. However, we must recognise as a council the judicial review process is an element of public scrutiny. And as such, we must seek to ensure that going forward, that we conform to any issues identified. Now that the review has been completed and its results are known, we now need to explore with City and County of Swansea and other relevant stakeholders how we can take this project forward. We were hoping to have a meeting with City and County of Swansea this morning, but unfortunately it was cancelled. Okay, any questions or comments on that report? No, so if not, I'll move on to point 6.
I've got a
annual
question,
account.
Chair.
Chair,
Sorry.
I've got a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yes, I noted what you've said with regard to the judicial review and the outcome. Is it the intention that MCC will have a special meeting to discuss how we move forward with this? If we're just going to sit and wait for a meeting with Swansea, you've just indicated that it was cancelled today. It could be cancelled next week. It could be cancelled a week after. One really doesn't know. I think we should be trying to make some decisions. Okay.
Just to respond to that, Ian, as soon as we became aware of the judicial review, we contacted City and County of Swansea and requesting this meeting.
Yeah.
And that was as soon as the result of the judicial review was, you were aware of it. They came back to us saying for us to meet today, this morning at 9:30. It was only cancelled yesterday. I've got to admit, I've been out and about and busy with my own day job today, so I haven't had a chance to respond, but I do intend to write to them, basically saying how disappointed we are and how important it is to have this meeting ASAP, because we need to know what their intentions are.
Okay, I accept what you say, Chair. It's just that, you know, on so many matters, when it's come to, you know, community asset transfers, we've been left dangling on a string by City, and you know, it's going on all the time.
I agree with you, Ian, and you know, I am very disappointed the fact that they cancelled that meeting at such short notice, with no really adequate explanation, if you ask me.
Okay.
So if we could move on to item 6, the annual account.
Chair, can I suggest, since Chris, our solicitor, is here, that we move on to the Underhill item, or you ask that?
I was thinking about that as well, yeah. Okay, so if we move straight to point 12, which is the Underhill lease. As I sort of said, Chris, our solicitor, is here today. Now, this has been an ongoing initiative that's been going on for quite some time, as you know. And what we are considering today, and what the proposal is, and the proposal on the agenda, is that we follow the advice of our solicitor and that we sign the tripartite agreement, which is the agreement that we've been working on for some time between City and County of Swansea, Mumbles Community Association and ourselves in relation to the processes that we will adopt in relation to assigning the lease and the sublease going forward. Now, as I sort of said, that is the topic that we are here to discuss today. And we've asked Chris to come along as the solicitor. So if there's any questions from councillors in relation to this lease, Chris, because you know this has been a very long and complex negotiation between MCA's legal teams, City and County's legal teams, and our own legal teams. And there's been a lot of to and fro in, a lot of different iterations of the potential agreement. And we've come to an agreement now which Chris is advising us it's in our interest to sign. So handing over to you, councillors, are there any questions that you can direct towards Chris? Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Chris, what were your instructions on this? It seems to me that you were told that to protect our interests in reassigning a lease that was going to be awarded to us for 125 years to MCA, rather than looking at the broader issues of getting value for money for our taxpayers, our council taxpayers, for the issues about that Dr. Lowe has raised about how MCA are elected and whereas we are elected body, and for the fact that I, as someone with over 20 years work in professional work in community recreation provision, have not been at all consulted about any of this, like Martin told me. So what we're being asked to decide is not a true picture of the opportunities available. Through their steering committee, MCA themselves came up with a company called Sports Clubhouses, who came out with some suggestions of a facility, a truly multi-purpose facility. They're a company who've been going for 20 years. You've only got to look on their website. They produce high quality community recreation facilities we can go and look at all over the country. The facilities that MCA and Simon and David Wilson in particular have come up with Griffiths, they're not people with expertise in community recreation. So I definitely, and this is being recorded, I will be referring the whole issue of how this has been handled to the Ombudsman, because the facts haven't been put to our residents who are paying for this. And so it's totally premature. Go Underhill has been going since 2000. I think the current group have been going since 2009. The urgency to sign something now, just to say, for a lot of councillors want to say, oh, well, we've been involved in a big project, because yes, I was responsible. I was the best thing since sliced bread when it started, because I proposed £300,000 to MCA over the first 2 years. But the proposal we've had before us hasn't even been considered by our own councillors, only the ones who are on the steering joint working group. We've got lots of new councillors, as I said. It hasn't been considered by the residents who are paying in our 5 wards, and it hasn't even been considered by the members and the volunteers and all the sports clubs who give their time for the young coaches. They've just seen one proposal. And so I will be referring this to the Ombudsman unless we deviate from that scheme and make sure that our residents do know about it. And that's going to put, I think, I've been taking advice on this. I've got one of my close friends, 2 son and daughter, work in very high positions in Welsh Government. I've sent them details. They've said questions about scrutiny and value for money. So I think it would be very premature to vote on one scheme when there is another scheme, which actually came from MCA's steering committee, which they said is their way of consulting with the public in the first place. I'm sorry that sounds a bit rambling, but I feel very strongly on this. And as people who know me, I won't give up on it. And therefore, you know, were your instructions to look at just this proposal and how MCC can hand over a lease to a non-elected body when we are elected through the proper local government elections every 4 years, and are responsible to how our residents' money, precept money, is spent.
In answer to that, that sounds mainly internal. My instructions were to protect the medium to long-term interest in the property as opposed to the grant funding, so it's secured within the community. That's how I carried out my actions from the beginning. I was never involved in any background discussion, so that question is not one for me. It's nothing I've ever been instructed on any of the background.
Can I make one kind of point to that, Chris, which I didn't add? What we were told clearly at the time when I was chair of the joint working group with MCA, we were told by the Welsh Assembly that we could not hand over the management of the facility with such a large sum of money as we're requesting, up to 1.2 million, unless we retain control of what happened in that facility. So that, how's that being dealt with? Because I've looked at there's 30 pages of that, you know, and we're not legal people to try and understand what you've written. It's difficult.
Yeah, as again, you seem to have had information that I've not received. I had none of that information, so I was unaware of any of it. There are various protections in the lease structure, as instructed and agreed, in terms of preservation of the asset. I never had any instructions on management matters generally. So those are issues I've not been instructed to advise on. It was preserving the asset within the community.
But I think Steve could confirm that that was the information we received from One Voice Wales, and there was a lot of to and fro between David and people at the Welsh Assembly, but we were unequivocally told that, you know, we couldn't borrow that amount of money without retaining management of the assets. And what I proposed was an equal asset management where both ourselves and the MCA are equally involved, plus members of the community who use the park informally.
Okay, can I bring Will in, please?
Yeah, I think firstly on Tim's last point, I think Paul has obviously dealt with that, and Paul will be able to answer that question for you, Tim. What's really frustrating here about, you know, bringing this up at the 11th hour is, you know, it's a little bit of misinformation there, because this was always a Mumbles Community Association project. Mumbles Community Association were the ones who had the agreement to lease from Swansea Council. They had the covenant lifted by the Duke of Beaufort, two things that Mumbles Community Council did not have, and in my knowledge, never put any interest forward in doing, which is the whole reason MCA was set up in the first place. Because Mumbles Community Council at its time didn't show any interest in taking over Underhill Park, which is, you know, led to the formation of MCA, who managed to get the covenant released, as I said, which is, you know, something that arguably the Community Council wouldn't be able to achieve, even if it wanted to. And secondly, MCA are the ones with the option to lease from Swansea Council. So it's, even if everyone agreed with the scheme of sports clubhouses, it was put to MCA and it didn't meet MCA's criteria. Therefore, they didn't want to take it forward. Now, MCA are the ones with the agreement to lease. They didn't think that that met the criteria. That's the end of the discussion. So there's no need for this to be taken further at all. This is a project which is a lot of people have put a lot of work into. And for at the 11th hour, for it to try and be upset is very, very frustrating. So it's a really good scheme. I hope the whole community is looking forward to it, and I hope everyone can get behind it and support it today.
Okay, Carrie, can I bring you in?
Yes, I just feel that you know, that it might surprise people to hear me say this, but I do actually think that Tim has some valid points in some of the information and some of the concerns that he's raised. I agree, you know, Will's talking about coming in at the 11th hour. I think there is an element of this this lease rather being put upon us at the 11th hour. You know, it was really quite short notice. It is a complex document, and I think, you know, me and perhaps other people might feel that you know, it would be useful to actually spend quite a bit of time actually just going through it and being absolutely clear what it means. But my main suggestion is that we perhaps just take a step back. I mean, you know, this has been going on for 20 years. It's not urgent to sign this tripartite agreement. It can wait another month or so. And I have three suggestions that I feel are things that should have been done some time ago and haven't been done, and that perhaps, you know, they're things that we should in fact be considering. So what I'm suggesting is that we commission, as we did with the skate park project, which was of significantly lower value, that we commission an independent consultant report to look at the different options and include the environmental considerations within it. It should include some element of public consultation. There's various reasons I've suggested for that, but really it's because this has never actually been properly considered. It has never been taken outside and actually looked at from an independent and objective point of view. And I think it's something that would be of real value. And I think our residents would then have some reassurance that you know, what is being put forward is actually the best value and the best option for the site. The second thing is we have had endless start dates and nothing's ever happened. In May 2020, over a year ago, we passed a resolution regarding the agreement to go ahead with this project. And part of that was an expectation that work would start on the pavilion and public toilets in 2020-21. It was assured there was £100,000 was all it would cost. That was in the reserves, and there was absolutely no reason why that couldn't go ahead. Absolutely nothing has happened. So I would again suggest my second recommendation is that we have a very clear and detailed timeline, which should be monitored monthly by full council. It can be brought to the council meeting. We can look at it. An explanation should be given to justify any deviation. And finally, my third recommendation is that from now on, all MCA, MCC joint working group meetings are recorded and made available to full council. This can be on a confidential nature for councillors only, so it would get round any concerns about information that shouldn't be in the public domain. Okay, so those are the three things. I did send them to Martin and Steve, so they have got them written down.
Okay, thank you for that, Carrie. Can I bring Richard in now then, please?
Yeah, number of things. First of all, on consultation, I do have a vague memory of going somewhere, I'm not sure it was the Austrian Centre, and seeing plans drawn up of various options for the area there. So there must have been some sort of consultation, because I've been to one. Yeah. On the solicitor's report, to be honest, I think we could read it for days and still not understand it. That's why we employ solicitors, to explain things in layman's language as well. Yeah, I get Tim's point, he's got some good points. However, what I will say is, if we wait until we have perfection, we'll never have anything. And this has been going on for years. There comes a time when you go grab the bull by the horns, but we may need a slight delay to get things right. Those are just my points.
Okay, thank you for that, Richard. Tim, can I bring, oh, sorry, Sarah, can I bring you in?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm really concerned with the vast amount of money this is costing the Mumbles. We really, an independent consultant report would be an excellent idea. It means that we can actually all say, MCA included, look, we've gone through scrutiny. We're not making the same mistake as a skate park, because you're all having a go at that we didn't do enough consultation, even though we had open things in Austrian twice. It would be sensible if we did that, really sensible, and have somebody else look at it and come back to us and say they did it fine, and then we can put a big tick by it and move forward. I think it's the best way. It'll put to bed all these complaints and concerns.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. If I could bring Rob in, because Rob hasn't spoke before, and then I'll bring Tim and Will in. Rob? Rob?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we are. It's a hard one, this, because, you know, we've raised our precept, and apart from Langland tennis courts, we haven't delivered anything yet. I think the public are sick of waiting for things to be done. This this project has been on the cards for, or, you know, the initial stages were set up 20 years ago with Mumbles 2000. I think what has happened is there's too many egos who've got in the way, and that's why it hasn't progressed. As Will said, we're at the 11th hour now, and the public, they just want to see it done, because, you know, so many members of the public have come up to me and said, brilliant what you're doing in Underhill, brilliant what you're doing in Skate Park and all this. This is what we want our precept spent on. This is what we expect. And now there's another spanner in the works. I'm for taking the solicitor's recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that, Rob. Can I bring Pam in, because she hasn't spoken before either as well?
Tim has made some very good points, especially about the consultation process. I remember sitting in our old offices when we were told about the consultation and saying in front of MCA, this wasn't a consultation. The public was offered one option, and it was either take it or leave it. I think the late suggestion that we have an independent scrutiny inquiry, that is an excellent suggestion. I haven't heard it before. But if you want something that's going to put everything right and put everything in one place at one time and say, look, we've done everything by the book, here's the last thing, you can't argue with an independent inquiry, then that's going to cover us completely, and it'll stop all of the arguments back and forth. It'll just stop everything completely, and I think we should go for that.
Okay, Rebecca Child.
I don't think there's a non-controversial opinion here actually, but first I wanted to ask, while we've got I lost Chris here, the one peppercorn thing, is that just because you have to put an amount that
Consideration. So
Right.
There's a case from 1860, it's a peppercorn rent, so it just means there is something, but it's not a physical payment. It was £1, but then that was taken out in case there was audit issues of the pound not being paid, so it's gone to a peppercorn rent.
Right, thank you so much, because that was the only bit that I was just unsure if it was a legal term I didn't get. I'm generally pro signing this document, because the only feedback I've had consistently from residents has just been that they want things built and done. That's why I'm pro that. I wasn't elected prior to May, so I haven't been here for this whole process, so I don't know the exact stages, and it'd be lovely if there was some condensed brief timeline, but my thoughts are just the electorate really want stuff to get moving, and they're not seeing, particularly obviously the skate park's the latest issue, but they're just not seeing things moving. So that's why at the moment I'm leaning towards the fact we should sign.
Okay, thank you for that, Rebecca. Rebecca Singh. You muted, Rebecca Singh.
So the kids playing here. Yeah, I'm just to say too, I've had communiques, of constituents saying, what's happening? Is it going? Is it not? So again, although there isn't an actual time pressure, like, for the treaty, they want some feedback on what's actually going on. And perhaps we could get some communication out on, not so much obviously the legal stuff, but what facilities are coming. Because they're like, oh, what's taking so long? What are you actually going to provide? Which I can fill them in for as well. But if they could, I don't know. I think they're losing interest or getting frustrated.
Okay, thank you for that. So if I bring Tim back in and then Will.
Yes, just to answer some of the many points made there. I mean, first thing I'd like to say at the beginning is congratulations to MCA on the fundraising. That's marvellous. What I've always tried to focus on, and David Wilson used to agree with me, is the outcome. What will be the best outcome for our residents? So with the money we've got and the pledge to borrow up to 1.2 million, if we wanted, we could probably get more, and the money they've raised, we could have a superb facility. Will is always cracking on about a gym. The facility for clubhouses had a 200 square metre gym. It was far better facilities. I've sent you all the photos. I'd like to show them now, but I think we need to do a special meeting with this, what many councillors have called for, criteria. The fact that it's 11th hour, it's not 11th hour. We've, as someone said, we could say we've had this force on us at the 11th hour. A resident, Chris Lowe, wrote to me, I think he's here tonight, middle of June, June the 14th. I told him it done my head in this project, that I kind of stepped back and referred him to Martin. Martin responded to him. He has written previously, he tells me, to MCA, and one of his points is they haven't got an address of a secretary, they just have an info box, and he didn't have a response. The point he raised that Simon answered this morning, well, he didn't answer them. We don't know how they elect their members. Despite them saying 2 are from the rugby club, actually 5 of them from the rugby club. Simon's a former rugby player, member of the rugby club, Gerwin is, and Peter Bray, the treasurer, is also the rugby club's treasurer. So have the rugby club members elected those people to be the trustees? The football club's members, I know very well because I'm very friend of Mike Poblieski. One of the trustees, Chris Parkin, resigned from the Mumbles Rangers Management Committee when I was involved in that over 2 years ago. Do all the members of the rugby club and the football club know about the alternative proposals? Because despite what people are saying just get it done. I've had lots of people come up to me and say, what's going in there? Is it going to be a gym? This was Chris Lowe's original intent, who goes to Sketty for a gym, I think. So the fact that people said just get something done, the facilities there are crap and not fit for purpose. So anything you propose and put nice glossy pictures up in the library saying, wouldn't this be a good idea? People are going to say, yes, it's a good idea. But there's a much better idea that our residents should be aware of. And when I say that I think there will be no doubt that we've been hauled up before the Ombudsman for this, this is a position statement I prepared for the full council meeting in February 2019 at Steve's suggestion, and it never even got considered. And what I said very clearly in this is that we wanted to manage this jointly with a new management committee involving equal membership between MCC and MCA, and for 2 democratically elected members of the informal users of the park. So I'm all in total transparency for how the people looking after this very valuable asset and maybe well over £1 million of money which they're paying for. And it's, you know, we're using that money, you know, we're not getting any of that money back. It won't be covered for is Simon Tay going to be there cutting the grass and pulling the pints, or David Wilson? You know, I also had a full management proposal for it. And, you know, Claire, the local lady who does our bowl screens and things, she would have bitten her hand off to be in charge of the bookings and managing it and doing everything. As Will himself said, he could get somebody who would come and, with the gym there, manage it for us and pay us to do it and do everything. So let's consider that there is an option. I'm bound to say it's a much better option, but I'm basing that on my 20 years in providing community recreation facilities, granting them, doing the brief, working with the architects throughout Wales to get school community facilities in particular open to the public and how to manage them. This thing about the Duke of Beaufort's covenant, that's a complete red herring. What the covenant said is you can't make a profit out of it, it can't be used commercially. And I believe David Wilson said, we won't make a profit out of it. We agreed this morning that we'd be happy to subsidise your stream because it's the only decent arts and culture venue in Oystermouth. So we will be happy to subsidise this. We would like it to run as much as it's cost as it can. But the idea that our residents, our own council members, we've got Becca, Rebecca Singh, Louise, we've got new members who don't even know about it. Only the people in the joint working group, which was you, Will, how good these proposals for sports clubhouses were. You and I attended a meeting on a Sunday morning with a steering committee where Hugh Griffith's original proposals, which we paid 14,000 for, didn't meet even governing body minimum requirements for the changing rooms. Paul has kindly sent me, Paul Byron, so far to date we've spent 98,000 on consultants, on architects, on MCC producing their video and their brochures, to Peter Linden Parkers, to Hurley and Davis for renewable energy. You know, that's just under £100,000. So we've done all this. Let's get somebody look at it who knows about sport and community recreation, who isn't me, who isn't David Wilson, who isn't Simon Tay. And says, and can I also point out that this was in our community plan. They made the point, Ben Reynolds, Urban Foundry made the point that no other community council of our size has no assets. And what he said is we should be looking at Underhill Park as the asset which we should run. We're not wanting to take it over, we're wanting to run it jointly, but considering we're putting most of the money in, we should have the say. And we are elected by our residents. We've put their precinct up 400%, and a reason to sign something now without even considering the options is not a good reason.
Okay, Chris, did you want to come in and answer some of that, I think?
Yeah, just a couple of points. Obviously, Tim's concerns are internal amongst yourselves, but just a couple of points. The Duke of Beaufort consent has been, it took 2 years to get that for MCA. And the land must be used for charitable purposes. It's a non-profit building
Absolutely.
A business, and anything that's raised is reinvested. So I think anything that they pushed back quite hard because we originally looked at the consent of Duke of Beaufort, but they said they wouldn't provide it to MCC. It will only be provided to MCA. So I think a revision of structure with Duke of Beaufort's consent required is probably going to add a substantive delay to where we are now.
Can I ask Chris why they would not want to give it to the elected body? We're not proposing making any money out of it. We're proposing to set up a management structure with MCA and other residents who use the park in Foley. There's no question of any commercial income coming back, it would be run as a voluntary sports club, which I wrote the Constitution of Voluntary Sports Clubs when I was at Sport Wales, and any money raised is invested back in the facilities. So why on earth would the Duke of Beaufort object to the elected members?
Come back on that.
Yeah, the advice.
It's not in stone, is it?
It came back from DJM saying that it was an arm wrestle to get consent for MCA, and during the process, the Duke of Beaufort estate advised they wouldn't give the consent to a community council because you were not a charitable organisation.
Yeah. Okay, Will, can you come in and then hopefully we can wrap this up and maybe take it to a vote because
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
I think all the points have been made.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just want to cover a few things because there's a lot of information out there which is a bit misleading as well. I mean, Duke of Beaufort, just touching on that very quickly. I mean, Swansea Council, as you know, paid a huge amount of money for the bridge over the Liberty Stadium. And, you know, there was no profit to be made on putting a bridge in there, and they paid about 700 grand from memory to, you know, put a bridge on the Duke of Beaufort's land. So, you know, the fact that it's not a money-making venture is irrelevant. Sarah, I'm not sure Sarah's aware, but there is a project manager. I'm just going to reel through the issues. Sarah, there is a project manager appointed to this. The consultation, MCA have done, well, I've been to 2 consultations. They've done one in the church and one in the Austrium, I believe, and they've obviously done online things as well. Carrie mentioned about there not being any rush. I mean, the grants from the lottery and from the Welsh Government are obviously time sensitive. There's a tender that wants to go out as soon as possible, which obviously we could get building. And as Richard said, you can look through this. Everyone's had days to look through this, and you could look through this for a week and still, at the end of the day, you need to put those questions to the solicitor who's here. Pam said about an independent review. I mean, One Voice Wales and the Audit Office have been involved in this the whole way. Steve and Paul have dealt with them. No councillors have dealt with them. Paul and Steve have dealt with them directly. And when it comes to environmental side of things, it's all done to regs. You know, that's all covered. I mean, Tim talking about the sort of outcomes, and what's best about this is the outcome. The alternative of not voting this through and going down another road is that, you know, that 100,000 that's already been committed to the project ends up largely in the dustbin. And of course, we spend years trying to get that covenant lifted, then years negotiating with Swansea Council to try and get a lease. And then, you know, we back to square one. This is a really good project, and hopefully everyone can get behind it. And I'm sure everyone in Mumbles will be really happy once it's built. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, if I can just bring you in just one more time.
Yeah, just a bit of clarification here. We have got the lease now, though, haven't we? MCC said that we wouldn't move forward unless we were in control of the lease because of the amount of money that's being we can't just hand over money, can we?
Chris, did you want to clarify this in relation to the lease? And yes, we have got the lease.
The lease will not be granted until completion of the works. The intention or the proposal was to sign the agreement for lease, which is the contract that ties the parties in to undertake the works and then grant the lease and sublease on completion of the works.
Well, Chris, can I ask Chris a question, Chair? Chris, what happens if things go a bit pear-shaped then financially, or things crash? Who gets left holding the baby?
Provided the works are undertaken or completed and MCA disband for whatever reason, then there's a provision in there that the lease would be granted to you and the underlease would also be granted to you to hold until an appropriate body was agreed upon for the underlease to be transferred to. So preserve the existing structure, and then once another MCA or whoever was set up, transferred to them. If the works, if the project, so the project's funded by lottery and grant funding. Under the grant agreement and the lottery funding as well, there's an accountability process on the expenditure. So the expenditure will be monitored throughout, and the expenditure is budgeted on the basis of the current cost. The project, how could the project fail? I suppose building material costs could increase. That's one thing that's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether they've factored that into the plan anyway. if it fails mid-project, then it's up to Swansea Council to take action against MCA. That is a can of worms. You know, they did, in fact, the council suggested at the 11th hour that MCC step in that scenario and finish the project off. Now that is quantifiable in terms of time, risk, cost, obligations. So we simply pushed back and said, look, if it's at the end, we will consider it and take everything on until new body's found. If it's mid-project, then the council would actually have to take action against Mumbles Community Association, and we'd need to investigate what had happened. It's like any project. If it fails mid-project, you've just got to look into why and what happened.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Rebecca Fogarty.
Thanks, Chair, and apologies if this is in any way broken up. As you can tell, I'm on the road. I just wanted to come in really and say that the role of the joint working group throughout this whole time, where we've been, where we've been going through the negotiations on this, has been to implement the will of council as expressed in the vote some time ago now to support this project. But making sure that we protect our interest in the sense that, you know, it's an asset that does revert to us and we need to know what that asset will look like, and be sure that it's the asset that we signed up for. So, you know, there's been a lot of information this evening that frankly would have been relevant when that first vote was taken to support this project. But at this point, at this point, the joint working group's role has been to implement the will of council as expressed at that stage, and so therefore I'll be supporting the recommendation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Carly, we've just got one last point because I'm really keen to move this to a vote now.
Right, yes, I think Will's being rather profligate with the truth, let's say. I mean, a lot of the things he said are not actually the case at all. You know, we're not talking about risking the whole project. All I'm suggesting is that we actually, you know, take a step back and we actually make sure that what we're doing is actually the best possible outcome for residents, for MCC and for MCA. You know, it's to actually commission an independent consultant is not going to take years. It's going to be a matter of, you know, it could probably be done within a month. And then, you know, as Sarah and Pam both said, we can then tick that box and say, great, right, fantastic. Just like we did with the skate park, we can now say to anybody who has any concerns, we have looked at this and we have made sure that it's correct. Yeah, there's
point of order, Chair. I don't appreciate being called a liar, especially when I haven't anything.
I'm not saying you're a liar, but you did make some
exactly
comments which weren't
Excuse me, Carrie. I do
entirely
think
accurate.
I do think Will has got a point there. It's not really good manners to imply that Will has been playing loose and fast with the truth. I'm sure that
all right, it's more a sort of rather vague sort of interpretation.
I'm sure everything that Will said is what he believes. And to be honest, you know, I do see his point that, like Will sort of said there, there's funding in place, there's been funding in place which MCA have raised themselves, which has been in place for a long time now, and everybody is waiting on MCC. So going forward, the point that Will made there is, you know, I'm not saying one way or the other. I don't know. But, you know, we do need to be aware that that funding has been in place for a long period of time. People have been waiting for us as MCC to get our side of the partnership agreement sorted out. It's been a long and involved process, which has required 3 legal teams. There's been lots of different iterations going back. I think Richard made a very good point. We can read this, you know, I got a PhD. I can read this until I'm blue in the face. I don't understand the minutiae of what's going on here.
Right, sorry, can I just finish, because I did have one more point,
okay.
Which is for Chris, or possibly for you, Martin, I don't know. But why do we not want to rescue the project if it falls over halfway through. Surely that's exactly what we should be doing.
No, we never said.
If there's a, yes, you have. You've said
No.
we're not prepared to do that. We're
No.
not prepared to accept that if anything goes wrong, that we will step in. Surely that's exactly what we should be
That isn't
doing.
what we said. I'll let Chris answer that because that isn't what we pushed back with.
The
We just sort of said we can't be expected to cover MCA's funding, which is not our funding.
council wanted a commitment now to step in. So if someone from MCA sent the money to the Bahamas and disappeared,
Oh,
you-
I see. Okay.
right? So
Well,
if at the time it does happen, the council will obviously reach out to you and say, do you wish to step in? And that's pretty much been confirmed by Lewis Hines. So the option is there without the commitment to do so.
right, but surely we should be making sure that there isn't an opportunity for them to actually have the money to be in a position to run off to the Bahamas with it. I'm sure Paul is going to be absolutely stringent about making sure that absolutely no money is paid over. It's purely to be paid on receipt of invoices. So I would think that's probably not a problem.
Not a great example. I was just using a just off the cuff example. The procedure is they invoice monthly. They have surveyors, you have surveyors. The
Yeah.
cost agreed, the payment is made. So there won't be someone running off
Yeah.
with 2 million.
So surely we should be there to step in and make sure that this project goes ahead.
You have the option to do so without a commitment.
Okay.
Okay. Tim, can I just bring you in
One final-
final
one
last time, but can you try and be brief?
I'll be very brief. It seems that Chris has acknowledged that he wasn't aware that we were definitely told by the Welsh Assembly that we couldn't borrow that amount of money for the purposes requested to develop Underhill Park unless we were managing or in some way in control of the facilities. So Chris hasn't had that information. So he
Tim,
needs to.
can I just clarify your point there? We have made an application to the Welsh Government for permission to borrow that money. We had to fulfill all the conditions that they give us. We have fulfilled those conditions. That is why they have given us permission to borrow that money. So yes, Chris would be aware of that. We are aware of it as the joint working group, and the Welsh Government would have been aware of it as well. That is why they allowed us to give us permission to borrow the money. I will hand over to Paul, who will clarify the situation.
Well, fine, but the ultimate thing is surely it is worth.
Can we let Paul clarify the situation,
We've had
please?
a suggested amendment, haven't we, that we postpone this, and I would say to our October full council meeting to get some more information about this, because despite what is being said, a rush to do something which may well not be deemed the best proposal, and not only do our residents not know about, as Rebecca Fogarty said, she didn't even know about, and yet this is something which a position paper was produced and not considered by a council position paper, which is very sensible, and it suggested sharing and suggested that the outcome was the important thing. And again, we're losing sight of the outcome. Anything is better than what's there now, so people are going to say, great, but let's get the outcome. And
Paul, would you like to clarify the situation?
Are a turnkey organisation.
Paul, would you like to clarify the situation in relation to the money from the Welsh Government?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, what I was going to say is following the decision in May last year of the council to support the proposal for Underhill Park, MCC appointed a consultant from One Voice Wales, Gareth Kiddie, and one of the questions we asked that he was asked to look at was, does MCC have the powers to borrow this money and to make a loan to a charitable organisation who will run the services in the park? And the first thing he came back with was, yes, we do have the powers. So I think it's clear from what he said that there isn't an issue with MCC borrowing the money and then lending it to then granting it to MCA to deliver the facilities.
Yeah, can you just clarify? It's not a loan; it's a grant. We're giving that.
It's a grant. Yeah, I did start saying loan, but I did change it to grant. There's a grant.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So I just want to move to vote. That's all.
Yeah, I think we need to move to vote. I think we're just going over the same ground over and over again. I would suggest.
Chair,
yeah.
Can I just explain? Sorry, just what Carrie is suggesting, as I'm sure she'll agree, is not an amendment to the motion. So what I suggest is But the first thing you do is Tim or Carrie can ask that the motion be referred back to the committee for consideration. So I suggest you do that vote. And then if that vote is lost, you go on to the main motion.
Could I clarify, Steve, that is that to refer it back to the MCC committee? Because some councillors know nothing about the previous proposals and the previous votes we had to develop the sports clubhouses option. Yeah, to deal with it tonight, you'd refer it either to the community or social wellbeing committee, or to the MCC subcommittee. Well, it should involve all councillors, shouldn't it? So, no, the MCC subcommittee is the group of Martin and Rebecca and Will, with support from Paul and myself. Right, that's a very small group. Wouldn't it be better if it went to a full committee, or certainly the social and community wellbeing committee, and then other such can speak to that? Yeah, that's your decision. I'm just outlaying the options to you.
Okay, so the proposal is that we refer the motion back, or delay the motion by referring it back to the community and wellbeing committee. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, I'll propose that.
Okay.
Yeah, could I ask for it to be a named vote, please?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, I'll go through every name then. If you can bear me a moment. Right, I'm just going to do it by how I see you on the screen, rather. So, Councillor Timble.
Yes, I support this amendment.
Councillor Rebecca Singh.
You're muted. You're muted, Rebecca.
You're muted.
Come back to us, Steve. Come back to her.
Come back to her.
Okay. Councillor Townsend Jones.
I support the amendment.
Councillor Martin O'Neill.
I'm against the amendment.
Councillor Will Thomas.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Ian Scott.
Against.
Councillor Louise Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Pam Erasmus.
Supporting the amendment.
Councillor Sarah Keaton.
I'm for the amendment.
Councillor Philip Reason.
I'm against the amendment.
Councillor Richard Jarvis.
I'm against.
Councillor Rob Marshall. I'm against. Councillor Rebecca Child.
Against.
Councillor Miles Langston.
I'm against the amendment.
Councillor Rebecca Fogarty.
Against.
And going back to Rebecca Singh, are you for or against, Rebecca?
I'm against. Sorry about that. It's chaos here.
Okay, so that amendment has failed. So if we move to the main proposal, that we accept the advice of our solicitors that a draft Underhill lease is accepted. Could we have a named vote again, please, Steve?
Chair, we need to slightly amend that because it's
yes,
the agreement for lease.
Agreement for lease, yeah. But so basically, we're agreeing to the tripartite agreement. So, Steve, can you do the name vote again?
Yeah, of course, Chair. Councillor Timble.
I'm against it.
Councillor Rebecca Singh,
Against, I think we should know.
Councillor Carrie Townsend-Jones,
I will abstain on this.
okay, Councillor Martin O'Neill,
I'm for.
Councillor Will Thomas,
For.
Councillor Ian Scott,
For.
Councillor Louise Thomas,
Or
Councillor Pam Erasmus,
I'm abstaining.
Councillor Sarah Keaton,
Abstaining.
Councillor Philip Reason,
For.
Councillor Richard Jarvis,
For.
Councillor Rob Marshall,
For.
Councillor Rebecca Child,
Or
Councillor Miles Langston,
For.
and finally Councillor Rebecca Fogarty.
For.
Okay, Chair.
Okay, so that's passed. And then into point 2, the council seal shall be applied to the lease by the clerk, the chair and vice chair to sign the document in accordance with Standing Order 33.
Chair, can I say that having spoken to Chris, the original document was mistyped as a deed. In fact, it's not a deed. So it doesn't need the seal, it just needs the signatures of yourself and your vice chair. So can we amend the motion accordingly as well?
Do we need to vote on this motion again?
Well, you're taking it in 2 parts, haven't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would
So,
obviously just a show of hands on that.
yeah, I think it'll just be a show of hands on that because
can you just then read out what the correct wording of item 2 is? Because obviously it's not a lease.
It's an agreement, signed as an agreement and not a deed. It's to do with Enforcement and Limitation Act. Deed is traditionally signed with seals or with witnesses. Agreements are just signatures.
Yeah, I just think we need to have a clear wording so we know exactly what it is we're voting for.
Just say the chair and vice chair sign the agreement document.
Yeah, that's straightforward enough, isn't it?
So it's the agreement, the tripartite agreement.
Yeah.
Maybe that needs to be made clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Can we do a show of hands then? All those in favour? Have we got that, Steve?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
All those against? Any to abstain? Okay. Noted. Okay, well, thanks for that. I think we got through that in the end anyway. So, Chris, thank you for your time. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
And just thank you for all your input all the way through this. Is that, you know, I know you've gone, if you ask me, you've gone above and beyond the call of duty, particularly in the way that you turn things around very quickly at times, with all the different iterations going back and forth. So on behalf of Mumbles Community Council, can I thank you for the help and support that you've given us in getting through what is quite a complex sort of negotiation in formulating the tripartite agreement. So thanks again, Chris, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much. And I'll leave you to it for the rest of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Right, okay then, so let me get my, so if we go back to annual accounts, is that correct? Steve?
Yeah, I think that's right, Chair. Yeah, item 6 was the next one, annual accounts.
Yeah.
Can I first apologise? This is going to be very boring after that last item. I do apologise, but it's the accounts. For the annual accounts, there's 3 lots of documents being circulated. One is the income and expenditure account, one is the balance sheet, and one is the annual return, which gets sent off for audit by Audit Wales. This year, we've had to change the way we do the accounts. In the past, it's always been on a receipts and payments basis, which is basically any cash you have or spend by the end of March, you include in the accounts. But income and expenditure now takes account of any commitments you've made by the 31st of March. So if you've ordered something for the 31st of March, but it's not been delivered, then you still include it in last year's account. So there's a little bit more complex, but and it did cause a problem this year because we also had to restate last year's accounts, which is why it was delayed. But moving forward, it should be fine. Income and expenditure account is basically a profit and loss account for local authorities, and it lists all the income received by committee and also all the expenditure that's been made. And at the bottom of that document, there's a general fund which shows the balance carried brought forward, the adds in the income, takes off the expenditure, and the balance at the end of March is just under 715,500, which is increased by 157,000. Seems like a big figure, but as everybody knows, there is a lot of money in reserves because of things like Underhill and because of things like the skate park, which hopefully they'll all be spent now in due course. Balance sheet is attached. That figure, just under 715,500, is what we're balancing back to. And you can see everything works out properly there, so there's no concerns with that. The annual return, that's you've got a copy of that as well. I think the main thing is that figure again appears on box 7, just over 715,000. So it just shows that everything works out. The one thing I would mention on the increase in the on the annual return is if you look at box 12, there's quite a massive increase in our fixed assets. Don't know whether anybody wants to hazard a guess why that is.
The Ostream Centre?
It is the Ostream, yeah. Yeah, what the Ostream Centre lease now has been included as part of our assets. I did ask the Welsh Audit Wales what's the best way to value it, but they never replied. So what I've done is I've used the insurance valuation for the Ostream, which is 1.1 million roughly. So I think what council's being asked to do now is to approve those accounts. That will allow then the chair to sign them and then for them to be sent off to Audit Wales. So I'm not sure there's any questions before you vote on the approval.
Any questions, council? No. Again, thank you for your input on this, Paul. Expertly done as usual.
Thank you, Chair.
So if I put this to a vote for council, all those in favour of accepting these annual accounts? Okay, there we go. So if we move on to point 7, it's you again, Paul, I take it, annual audit?
Yeah, me again. The accounts were sent off to our internal auditor. He's provided a report which is attached, and he's also filled in part of the annual return, which I've attached as well, which is his audit report. The important thing is his audit opinion, which is assurance can be expressed in the governance arrangements and the financial statements of Monmouth Community Council for the financial year 2021. So that's the good news. He has made 2 recommendations. One is to do with MCC doing a financial risk assessment. It's something that does need to be done, so I think we just got to accept that needs to be done and make sure it's done as soon as possible in this financial year. His other finding was that what he did was ask to look at the staff's contracts of employment, and what he picked up was the clerk's contract includes RFO responsibilities. When I've looked at it, what it actually says is you are employed as community clerk / in brackets responsible financial officer, but will cover the duties of the designated responsible financial officer as required. So I think he's slightly misunderstood what the meaning of that is. The meaning of that is that if I'm not available, then Steve would step in and do the RFO responsibilities. I don't really see that as a significant issue, and I will reply to him on those grounds, just for his understanding of what the intention of that clause is in the contract. And again, the councillors have been asked to approve that internal audit report. But any questions first?
Well, I was just going to say on before I bring Carrie in, we are due to have a sort of review of duties with One Voice Wales as well, aren't we, of staff? So that might sort of be covered in that as well. Anyway, Carrie.
Yeah, just to clarify, so Paul can feed that back to the auditor, that actually the contract was drawn up by One Voice Wales, you know, at the time that the responsible financial officer was appointed. So, you know, I think the whole purpose of having that clause in there was to cover us, as you say, Paul, in case there's any reason why you know, if you're off sick or something. So, you know, I think you can just make that point. This is a One Voice Wales recommended contract, you know, and therefore, you know, would be standard throughout Wales.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I will make that point and I'll reply to him.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If that's the case, can I put it to council that we accept the audit report? Those in favour? That's accepted. You again, Paul, I take it, financial report.
Yeah, financial report, as usual, financial report, just to quickly go through. There's a list there of all the invoices that have been paid in June, and all the invoices have been copied to the OneDrive folder for this meeting, so they're there if anybody wants to look at them. The Barclaycard purchases are listed as well, and they've been saved to OneDrive. No income, bank balance is at July is 831,000, just over. And the fine thing, I usually put budget monitoring, but until the committee structure is resolved, I haven't put a new budget on our accounting system, because you can change the committee structure at the start of a year. It's very difficult at part way through the year, because you've got to change the budget. You've got to change every single transaction that's gone in. Well, every single transaction that changes. So as soon as we know what the new committee structure is, then I can set that up on Scribe, and then we can start doing budget monitoring reports to committees and to council on a monthly basis.
Okay, Tammy.
Just one very small question. We still, presumably there's been no resolution around the fact that we are still paying £800 a month for one very small room to Ostream. Is that being dealt with in any way?
There was a meeting today, wasn't there, with the Ostream Centre? Has anybody got any report back on that?
Yes, we did have a meeting with them today, and we did point out that we had agreed at the last meeting of the OCA that we would only pay for Monday, Wednesday and Friday mornings from 9:30 to 12:30. Elaine Wright said she has sent us what that would cost, but we haven't yet firmly corresponded with that, according to Steve. What we need to do first is remove all our equipment from the room so it can go back to its normal use. And we've arranged a meeting next week where myself, Will, Claire, who's usually the office most at the moment, Elaine and Stuart Backup will go to the office. We will clear it out. They will be happy with how it's left, and from that moment on, we will only be charged the use for 3 hours, 3 times a week, which I think will be, was it 200? Can you remember the amount, Steve?
I can't, because I've never seen it written down, so I don't know.
Well, Elaine said she'd sent it, didn't she? And she was going to send it again. Anyway, yes, it's not satisfactory to be playing like that. I agree, Carrie, but it seems to be nearly resolved.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Okay, any other questions in relation to that? So if not, can we put it to council to accept the financial report? All those in favour? That's okay then. So then if we go on point 9, this comes from the report that we commissioned from One Voice Wales, looking at committee restructure and the discussions that we've had at the various committees. I've put together a brief discussion paper, and I would like to stress that these are just suggestions to help guide our discussion. And what I am proposing that we call a special meeting in the next week or two for people to decide if they're happy with the committee structures as put forward. It's a lot more streamlined committee structure, as is in the document that I've circulated. And then hopefully we will formulate the committee structures from there and appoint committees from that meeting. So that's what I'm proposing, in the same way that we did with the code of conduct, where people get the chance to look at it, read it, consider it, and then come back to a meeting with the ideas formulated. So that's what I'm proposing. Any questions?
Yes, if I may, Chair.
Tim?
I mean, I'm surprised that you've sent that paper round, but not the original proposals from Paul Egan. They should be with
it
all.
was in the. Sorry.
Well, I've spoken to 2 councillors who said they haven't had it.
I'm sorry. I thought that had been. I thought it was.
It was.
It was in the.
It was sent to everyone.
How long ago?
Last month before.
I've spoken to people who haven't got it, and I couldn't see
Well,
it.
whichever way, we can
Right.
resend.
Yes,
We can
yeah.
resend the original report, but the report has definitely been sent to. But maybe it should have been sent to the documents. I have got some concerns about the way that the documents are sent out for committee meetings. I'll base this at some other point in the future, because getting 99 pages in a big file, it's a lot to go through and find what it is you're in. What it is the main concern in relation to the meeting that you go into. I would prefer it if the documents were broken down into individual files for the individual topics on the agenda. Because as I sort of said, we had 99 pages. To be honest, I thought it was in the documentation, but as the fact that we had 99 pages, maybe that's how it got lost.
No, it's not in this documentation, Chair. Could I just suggest that, because it is very important that all councillors, we've almost created a super councillor by chairs having a look at a assess of that, whereas we were told right at the beginning by Paul Egan, you know, in our training, that chairs' function is solely to chair the meetings that they are chairs of. So, I propose this paper for Paul Egan. Did the paper originally in November suggesting we use him, and we've come up with something now, or you've come up with something, which is we're discounting everything he said. Well, you know, he's pretty knowledgeable about this, so I think all councillors should look at Paul Egan's proposals, your paper that you've put up, and indeed, I understand we're not having a council meeting in August. They say that people have got to give their replies by the 31st of August, and then they could be collated by the clerk or into a response, which we can then discuss at a special meeting and agree a way of moving forward.
To be honest, Tim, that's what I was trying to say in relation to that document that I put together. I haven't really put in there what my thoughts are. I've tried to distill what has come out of the discussions that have occurred at the various committees and put in some suggestions there just as a discussion topic. But I very much agree that this should go through around all councillors, and all councillors should have an input to it. Louise Thomas?
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do is have a SharePoint. So all documentation from every meeting should be visible.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, that's what it should be. You know, we're not privy to everything that's going through the council, and we can't go to all the committee meetings. So I think it's an easier solution. It's just to have everything through documentation. SharePoint would work.
No, I agree with you, Louise. Is that, you know, we were using the Apple Cloud app, but the thing is, it's broken down really, and you know that what it is as well, as a community council, we need to have an archive there of all our documentation, so that it's not just councillors who could have access to it, and that we can easily point other people to where the documentation is. And as I sort of said, if we point people to, it was discussed at the council meeting on the 13th of July 2021, and they're confronted with 100 pages, and then they've got to scroll through that. That isn't really conducive to transparency and openness. So yeah, I very much agree with you, but that's just the sort of technical stuff that we need to look at, and I will look at that with the clerk and the other staff as well. Carrie?
Yeah, can we just make a recommendation that we have a special meeting before the end of July?
Yeah.
And I would suggest it is a reconvening of the AGM, because there was quite a lot of other things that weren't dealt with in the AGM, including this committee restructure. Can we just move to a vote that we do that, and then
Yeah,
we don't have to discuss any further?
I'm in favour of that. Steve just wants to come in now.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Just to explain, we don't use the iCloud. We used to use Dropbox, and then our consultant advised us to use OneDrive, which we've had constant problems with. And if you look back at previous meetings, you'll see people say, "Oh, I couldn't find that in OneDrive. I've not got it. My OneDrive doesn't work." So to deal with that, I do what councils throughout the land do an agenda pack. All the city councils will be very familiar with this. They're very large documents, but at least you can say I can say to you, you've had the email, you've had all your documents. So it's damned if I do, damned if I don't, but I accept that. Secondly, we can't really reconvene the annual meeting. It needs to be reconvened, but you need to decide what you're going to do with the committees first, because you may need to amend standing orders before the, and so on. So
okay. Tim,
so can I just quickly, for Steve's benefit, in case he didn't see Rebecca Child's recommendation, that the agenda pack, just alongside each item, you actually put the page number, and then it's very easy for people to just go straight to the document that's relevant to that item.
You mean like an index?
Yeah, seems very sensible.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a great recommendation. Thanks for that, Rebecca.
Thanks, Rebecca. Tim?
I'm surprised that we're considering a special meeting to do this before the end of July. We're not having a committee meeting in August. So it's not needed. As I said, all the organisations I work for, from national, regional and local government, we send papers out and something important is 2 weeks before to get people to digest them. This is something important for all our elected councillors. They should come back with their proposals, yourself or Paul, or collectively collate them, and then they could be sent out, and we could have a meeting maybe in the first week of September prior to our full council meeting. But I can't see rushing to get something in before the end of July. It's already July the 13th. I'm on holiday till next Tuesday. It's a time where we can, again, what is the urgency? Because there's not a meeting in August, so there's no meeting for various committees to consider.
Okay, Carrie?
Yeah, there is actually an urgency, because we have 2 new councillors who at the moment are unable to actually participate really and effectively in anything, because they don't have any committees to work with. Secondly, this has been discussed extensively at every committee. So pretty much every councillor, apart from Paul, Rebecca and Louise, who are not members of those committees, have actually been able to discuss this at length. As Martin said, the proposal he's put forward is actually a distillation of all those comments, including at JEC, including at a meeting of all the chairs of the different committees. So I don't think there's any problem at all in having that meeting at the end of July, and then we can make sure that every councillor who we have, newly elected and older elected, can all actually be involved in committees from September.
Okay, thank you for that, Carrie. Rebecca, you wanted to come in, or you just left your hand up?
I wanted to say thank you, Carrie, for saying pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I haven't had to say on who chairs, vice chairs are, and I haven't been able to. Luckily, some chairs have been really lovely and let both Louise and myself say what we think, but we haven't been able to vote on anything. So that's been rubbish. Also, I know some people have got holidays and things, but like my work gets really busy in September, and I'm quite busy throughout summer, but this is important, and it will be a quarter of my term that I won't have been able to have any say, and same for Louise, and we weren't elected to not have any say. So the sooner we can get this done, the better. I'm happy to meet in August or to do multiple meetings in July, but that'd be great.
Okay, thank you. Will, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just very quick thing to say, just I mentioned it in a WhatsApp group recently about just another way of potentially communicating amongst the councillors, putting out agendas and making sure the files are always on hand is Slack, which we use in work, which it might just be worth looking into, because I don't know if anyone else uses it, but I find it really, really good. It's like WhatsApp meets email, should we say. So yeah, worth looking into.
Okay then, so based on the discussion that we've had here, can we resolve that we'll discuss with the chair with the clerk how we can get these meetings finalised by the end of July?
Okay.
All those, are we in favour of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so, okay, we've got a recommendation to move on to that. So if we move on to item 10, councillors' individual fund. Proposed that the pending agreed procedure, Councillor Mark shall be allowed to spend his allocation on benches for the Newton Village Hall. Anybody want to talk on that, Rob? Or?
Well, yeah, no, I'll just mention it because you know, it was agreed at the budget meeting that councillors would have a £1,000 to spend within their ward.
Yeah.
Now the new financial year started at April, and my money is for putting some recycled plastic picnic tables outside the village hall, which I've spoken to the vicar about. And we're just waiting on having the money so I can get them ordered, basically. I mean, the summer is coming on, you know, when we're halfway through July. The pop-up cafe there is doing really well. It extends the number of people who can use it. And on a Saturday, it's frequently used by especially older members of the community. And, you know, I just don't want to waste any more time. I just want to get on with it and order them.
Okay. Thank you. Richard?
As Rob said, he doesn't want to waste time. Do we have to vote on this? Shouldn't the councillor's allowance, shouldn't they just be able to spend it?
Yeah.
I think everyone here can be trusted not to spend it on BF their mates or on them stupid, so we can just get on and do what we want with that allowance. It's common sense.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah, I mean, obviously, I get what Richard's saying about you don't scrutinise it, but every decision, financial decision, has to go through full council. But yeah, it shouldn't be sort of scrutinised, but at the same time, it has to be sort of passed through. I think it's a really good idea, Rob. Go for it. The only thing I'd say, if you look at Swansea Council, use Second Life Products Wales for their recycled plastic.
That's what I'm using. Well,
right. There we are. Cool. Nice one.
Chair,
did you want to come in?
Point of information, yeah. Paul has drafted a procedure on the councillor's individual fund, and it's just pending approval of that Rob's thing is going through. So,
okay,
very simple. You've got a huge amount of discuss tonight. I'm amazed that you're discussing it. It's a no-brainer.
Okay, well, saying that, I see Carrie and Rebecca. Do you want to come in?
Just very briefly to say, for goodness sake, you know, Will says everything has to go through full council. No, it has to agree with financial regs. If financial regs say that we have £1,000 and we can spend it as we see fit in our community, it does not have to come to full council.
Okay.
I don't think that's a good precedent, personally.
Well, that's something for the discussion another point, but you know, as I sort of said, this is just a point of procedure. But anyway, going back to this thing, can I put the proposal to full council? All those in favour? Okay, that's passed. So point 11, appointment of Mallard Chartered Surveyors, that we accept the quotation of £450 from Mallard Chartered Surveyors to negotiate the heads of terms of the licence with the representative of the Austrian Community Association. Will, do you want to talk to this? Or?
Vote.
No, Tim.
Tim?
Vote on it, yes.
Yeah, it's quite self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wonder, anybody got any questions on it? No, if not, then can I point it to vote? All those in favour? Okay. We've done point 12, thankfully. Point 13, the draft ground rules code of conduct, which you would have had in your pack. Now, a lot of you would have been involved and should be aware that this has been an ongoing process that Alan Thomas has been working with us on, is on drafting a code of conduct for all councillors, rules of code of conduct. Now, you will have had a chance to look at it, to read it. So any questions that you've got on that, please raise them now. Okay, Pam?
I read it ages ago. Could somebody remind me, is there anything in the code of conduct about social media that we're involved in, whether that should be confidential or not? Are we able to do it?
No, the social media, I would say, is covered in our social media policy. I did send an email round some time ago.
Yes, you did.
In relation to confidentiality of social media. If you want to revisit some guidelines, because the thing is, you've got to remember that we drafted the social media policy not all that long ago anyway. And it was the first time we'd had a social media policy in Mumbles Community Council. So if there's any where you'd want to revisit this or have any discussion around it, and then I suggest that you put it as a separate motion. There's nothing specific in the code of conduct as it stands about confidentiality of social media, but as I sort of tried to explain in the email I sent around at the time, it is a bit of a minefield really when it comes to confidentiality of social media, because if there's going to be confidentiality in social media, there needs to be pretty much a formal agreement between those people who are signed up to that particular social media platform. And if that agreement isn't in place, then you cannot assume confidentiality. One might like it, one might not like it, but that is just the way, I have sort of done some reading up on this. Carrie?
And I completely agree with this, but what I would like to request, please, is that we actually revisit the whole, I can't remember what it's officially called, mediation process, because at the moment there's absolutely no teeth.
No,
if
to be honest,
it's part of code of conduct, and can we please make a commitment to actually revisit how that position, that can be addressed so that there is actually some resolution
to be honest,
available.
Yeah. To be honest, that is covered in point 18.
And no, it's not.
Well, it is, I would argue, because the whole point is to monitor the implementation of the code of conduct. And if people aren't complying with the code of conduct, then we need to look at what measures we take to censure people for not conforming to the code of conduct.
Yeah, there isn't a point 18. Sorry, just to point out, it stops at point 17. So if there should be a point 18, then it's been missed.
18 items for the Joint Enabling Committee proposal to monitor the implementation of the ground rules code of practice.
No, well, the copy that's in the agenda pack stops at point 17.
Well, I've got the one out of my
last point
agenda
is
pack.
whenever possible, councillors should raise issues with committee chairs. That is the last point.
No, sorry, we're talking across purposes here. Sorry, Carrie. I'm talking about point 18 of tonight's agenda.
Oh, sorry. No wonder I'm confused.
Yeah. No.
Right, sorry, I just need to check. What's point 18 of tonight's agenda?
Is proposal to monitor the implementation of the ground rules of the code of practice.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is to, the whole sort of thing, it's all very well and good to have in this code of practice, but when we need to look at, are people adhering to it? If people aren't adhering to it, what censures do we need to put in place to ensure that people do adhere to it?
Yeah.
Things that have been things that have been suggested is, you know, people are being suspended, people are being losing their chair of committees and issues like that. But, you know, that's what's being proposed there, to have a look at that.
Okay, as long as that is included, because it is an issue that at the moment we have a very good resolution process, but if one party chooses not to participate in it, there is absolutely no comeback.
No, to be honest, this is, you know, and this is a point that, you know, has been raised on a number of occasions before, and this is why we've put this in there, to be honest. And, you know, it is a point that's been raised with Alan Thomas, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, so it will be dealt with. I can
Yes,
be
it will be
confident
dealt with.
that it will be
Will
dealt
be dealt
with.
with, because exactly as you sort of say, is that, you know, there's no point in having this conflict resolution policy. There's no point in having this code of conduct if we haven't got any sort of procedures or censures for making people to conform to it.
Absolutely.
Carrie made my first point about if someone doesn't want to participate in it, they don't have to. And the second one is, do we as a council have a right to suspend an elected councillor from MCC?
I'm sure. Steve, could you, I would have thought that we do. If we've got the power to, if somebody is misbehaving in a meeting, we've got the power to ask them to leave the meeting.
Different. You said suspend them from, do you mean suspend from a meeting or suspend from members community council?
Yeah, do you want me to answer that, Chair?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I've checked this point with One Voice Wales, and as a councillor, you're elected by, you know, the people of Mumbles to represent them. So you have a right to attend all full council meetings. Yeah, so you've got that right. Obviously, if you behave badly and your fellow councillors think you should be suspended from a meeting, you can be suspended from a meeting. You have no right to be appointed to committee. You have no right to represent the council as a governor. You have no right to represent the council on any other body. So if you wanted to have teeth or to your ground rules, then those could be used.
We need to talk about this.
Yeah, this is not included in the current proposal.
No, we need to talk about that.
The point I think that Alan's trying to get is just to further expand. There's a code of conduct that all councillors sign up to, based on the Nolan principles, and all councillors throughout the land have to sign that. And there's two procedures linked to that, which is the local resolution code of conduct, which One Voice Wales developed in conjunction with the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales, which is a second tier. So we have very little control over that procedure that's written for us. The thing that Alan's worked on is a sort of, I suppose, a fine tuning, and is about the way we want to treat each other, stop bullying, stop dominating meetings. It's a little bit more subtle than the code of conduct that you've signed up to, but we're hoping that because you designed it, the councils involved with creating it, that there will be a buy-in to abide by those agreed rules.
Okay, Tim.
Thank you, Chair. You will recall that in the depths of last COVID winter, I think Alan did his first training session with us, but sadly, which I enjoyed very much, and it came out with a lot of good stuff, only just over half the councillors were there. So I'm a bit worried about, you know, have we all been involved in this to come out with how Alan has synthesised this into the recommendations. That's the first point. The second point is I'm a huge believer in, as I'm sure you are, and I've said you are, in transparent debate. But we've got the point made here, you know, that allowing people to challenge and put a different view forward is an important part of healthy scrutiny, and yet that's contradicted by supporting the chair when they are managed or trying to do the meetings, managers support the chair to manage meetings effectively, etc., but also to be told once the decision has been made by the council, all members should respect it, no one should make public statements underlying that decision. I mean, you know, that's very totalitarian, isn't it? You know, that's what happens in totalitarian states. It might be that that wouldn't be encouraged, but as you've just discussed, if that's going to be you would have to have a different set of code of conduct that we've got now, which would say you would suspend that councillor. But I do, you know, what we need is to have more respect for what's happening in meetings and having a healthy debate and not get bogged down in the same issue being repeated more. But I don't know, I've got a little bit of unease about, you know, a lot of local governments are getting into trouble because they just have an inner circle of cabinet committee members making decisions. So I don't want us to go down that route.
No, and to be honest, you know, as you sort of said, this document has been formulated through discussions with the councillors. Of course, you know, we can't force councillors to attend the workshops and contribute. At the same time, the whole point with what we're suggesting in point 18A is to monitor the implementation of these ground rules and to reflect on, and you know, if there needs to be any changes of going forward. It's the same like with any of our other policies, particularly when they're new policies. You know, we do need to reflect on, research them, find out what's working, what isn't working. But, you know, when it comes to you know, the guidelines as I read them, they're very sort of basic. I don't find them totalitarian at all. Is that they're just about respecting people's different points of view. You can respect people's different point of view, but that doesn't mean that you undermine them inside the meeting or that you're disrespectful to them.
Well, it's saying you should not make public statements. I totally agree you should not make public statements which have misinformation, but if you make a public statement which is based on facts, what's wrong with that?
Is this the right place to be having this discussion?
No, this is
well, it's on the agenda.
Rob, did you want to be coming in, sorry?
Yes, thanks, Mart. I want to agree with you that it's not totalitarian. You know, everything that is agreed by council is agreed by full council. Even if a recommendation comes in from a committee, any councillor can raise in the meeting, actually, I would rather not adopt this or recommend this for these reasons, and could go to have that motion overturned. Now, what we've got to remember is that all our decisions are made democratically, and therefore as a unit, and to represent unity with, especially on social media with the public and stuff like that, once a decision has been made, yes, we should all respect it. It happens, and Will back me up on this, with school governors. Once you can note and have it minuted that you object to something and that you don't agree with it, but you're not allowed to publicly then disagree with it, because we work as a whole, we work as a team. Nobody makes a decision for the whole council. We make it collectively, and once that decision has been made, then we have to abide by it, and like it or lump it, just put on a happy face and, you know, just say, right, okay, yeah.
Okay, Rebecca, Charles, did you want to come in?
I think Philip has had his hand up for a while.
Well, Phil, reason.
Yeah, sorry,
Sorry, Pip, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's very considerate. Thank you. I've got a view on this, and I take Carrie's point on board as well about mediation. And I think that what's upset me over the last 3.5 years has been the Ombudsman getting involved, or being involved, when I didn't think the Ombudsman needed to be involved. And I think that that's a failure on our part, not to have something between us and the Ombudsman that makes a councillor feel that they've had their grievance heard properly or dealt with properly. And I think that we need to work on this point, because look, I've been involved in some mediation, and my aim is to get everybody happy at the end of it, and to feel that they've had justice in whatever way that form that is. But I think that so far it's ended up with councillors being sometimes more upset than when we started the mediation, and in most cases the councillors have been very balanced, in fairness, on all sides. It's not been, you know, anybody stood out as being unbalanced. It's just that the problem is that we jump to the Ombudsman too quickly, and we need to see if we can get something underneath that to stop that happening. Because it's like crying wolf, isn't it? At the end of the day, they're going to just say, oh, for God's sake, this Mumbles Community Council again. It does us no good as a community council, and it's very, very unsettling for everybody. So I think we need to look at this, and as Pam says, spend some time, you know, looking at that process.
And of course, Phil, that is exactly why One Voice Wales came up with their dispute resolution a policy or approach. But you know, maybe one of the issues that it hasn't got there is that the point that Carrie made is that there's no real teeth there. There's no real way of making people conform to it. Rebecca, did you want to come in now?
Yeah, I don't think there really is very much teeth when you're elected representative on the body you're elected to, unless the public decide to like remove you from position by loads of them triggering the ballot to do that. So you don't really get much teeth, and it has to be pretty consent. You have to give your consent for it. I think it's really good as a document. Not to say that it couldn't be improved on further discussion, but I'd be happy to accept something like it now on the basis we could keep talking about it and improve it further. And in regards to not being able to undermine decisions and things, I think there's a real difference between being able to go online and say, I voted against this, and being able, which is like being accountable to people you elected, or I voted for this equally, and trying to undermine the decision and saying, oh, we did it without all the information, or, you know, like there's really different ways of presenting that. So I don't think it stops you from saying the truth than what you did. I think it stops you from trying to sort of, you know, not give all of the full information, which I think is good. So it looks like a good document to me. And while I wasn't present at the meetings where this was discussed, or the group where it was discussed, looking in the comments alongside when they came up things, there were a lot of things that I've thought myself. So it's quite nice to see that like there's wider concern on the same areas, and we are all united in what we do and don't like in meetings. So that was really good.
Okay, Richard, thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, this document is new to us. It's like any new legislation, never perfect, comes in and it gets amended. Now we can talk round and round it until you have perfection, but we'll be talking forever. You know, I think we should accept it and then amend it as necessary.
Yeah, well, that's what we're proposing with, as I sort of said, point 18, because I didn't think it was enough to just adopt the document. We need to reflect on and look at how we implement it, and you know, maybe what is working, what it isn't working. Ian, did you want to come in?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to point out that in certain instances, the only option has been with the existing code of conduct to actually go to the Ombudsman. Because if you make a complaint or against someone, and that someone doesn't want to, shall we say, play by the rules, the only option that's left is to take it to the Ombudsman. You know, the existing code of conduct is ineffective and it's impotent. You know, I'm not going to quote names and I'm not going to quote instances, but you know, I have been subjected to two separate matters, and you know, it's one of which is going back to 2017, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
You know, it's all very well talking about it, but you have to, it's fine Pip saying, well, you shouldn't have to take it to the Ombudsman, but if the person who's broken the code of conduct isn't prepared to be reasonable and apologize, the only route open is to go to the Ombudsman.
Yeah, Pip, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just to say, just to back up what I was saying, if you remember what I said there needs to be a stronger element to what we do to avoid going to the Ombudsman. So yes, I agree with you, but we're saying the same thing, that I think there needs to be an extension to what we have now, and that's the point we need to look at. Yeah, so I agree, and I understand what you're saying, but there needs to be something put in place to make it not necessary or highly.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that, but you know, as I've said, I'm not going to go into length on this one. And there's no point. The persons involved know who they are.
Okay, right. Pam, shall I bring you in?
There is a median line via Swansea City Council. They say if you've got any complaint, go to them first, and if you can't resolve it through them, then go to the Ombudsman. So this will ours will be ours is the first stop, City Council is the second stop, Ombudsman's the third stop. So there is a system in place. I can't remember what it's called, a county hall. See, can you remember it's called a county hall?
Yeah, it doesn't work like that, Pam, though.
No.
They deal with referrals from the Ombudsman, so they're the sort of final jury in that whole process.
I thought we could refer to them before it went to the Ombudsman.
No,
we can't.
No,
No.
you're wrong.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Okay, but I would sort of say, hopefully, you know, what we're trying to aim at with this code of conduct is, one, trying to avoid undue conflict when there doesn't need to be any, and particularly for people treating each other with respect, but also when relationships do break down, to look at, you know, potential ways of sanctioning people to ensure that they do conform to treating their peers with respect. Rebecca Child, did you want to come in? No, you've still got your hand up, is it? Rob Marshall?
Oh, sorry, hands up.
Okay, Carrie.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with this, but can we just add in that it will be annually reviewed, because otherwise these things just kind of set in stone and nothing ever actually happens. So can we actually add into the recommendation that it's subject to an annual review?
Okay, I got no problem with that. So the way to do this, Steve, is we vote on the review annually first.
That's right. That's the amendment, Chair. Correct.
Right. So the amendment is that this code of conduct will be reviewed annually. All those in favour? Okay. So then going back to the main recommendation, that the ground rules be approved. The code of conduct, the ground rules be approved. All those in favour? Okay. That all councillors are asked to sign up to them. All those in favour? Okay. All I'm sort of saying now we've got a code of conduct, all councillors will be asked to sign up to them. So when there is a breach of code of conduct, we have got a code of conduct to go back to and sort of say, well, this is already covered in the code of conduct.
Sorry, Martin. It's not when there has been a breach of the code of conduct, but when someone has said that there might have been a breach of the code of conduct, and that is to be decided by the arbitration.
Yeah, okay. So if we go on to point 14.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
We've missed item 11.
No, we've done that. But anyway.
Chartered surveyors?
Yeah,
we've done item 11.
Sorry.
Sorry. I've got people coming from me at 8 and I've got 1% left on my battery because that's been a very long meeting. So I'll have to take my leave. So enjoyable and interesting meeting. There were questions to the chair of premises. If I could briefly do that. We did have a meeting this morning. I've answered one aspect of that, is that we're moving, we won't be paying 800 a month. What they also asked is that from the 29th of September, we go forward working in conjunction with the current Stream Community Association about events that might be put on in the hall so the income can be increased, because obviously what they're paying is half what we have to pay the church. What we did agree before COVID, which has obviously severely impacted on what was our original wish, which is that we would work with them for the first year, then we would review the rent out after that, because they were making enough income to cover the costs. But obviously post-COVID, once classes and things stop, we don't know. And what we also wanted was the opportunity for ourselves to put on certain events which would bring an income. So we hope that we've agreed in principle that will commence from the 29th of September. In the meantime, Stuart Backup is drawing up some suggestions for lease based on our discussion this morning, which will come to us initially through the premises committee, if that still exists, and then we'll come to the full council. So we are trying to get somewhere post-COVID, but I think we have to accept that I did have a feeling, I did say in the meeting, I felt that, you know, they were wanting a lot of flexibility from us, but not perhaps offering so much to us.
Well, I think his batteries run out. But thanks for that, Tim. I think we got the gist of what he was referring to, so we'll use that as a point of information. So if we go back...
Can I make, are we going to discuss that after, or can I make a comment on what Tim has said now? Or should you prefer to
comment now?
This is allocating anything we do to the Austrian first in West Cross and in Newton as well. We support our own community centres. To have Austrian as the default place where we uphold everything from members community council, that's something we've really got to talk about. That won't work.
Okay, well, I think that needs to be something going forward with the Austrian working group or whatever replaces, or if it continues, the premises committee.
Thank you.
Okay.
Martin,
okay, any other questions? Rob, sorry.
Sorry, just Richard is waiting. He's trying to get in. His battery died, so he's just sent me a message to say he's trying to get back in.
Yeah, I think I had a message of him as well. Can you let him in, Steve?
He's not showing in the waiting room.
He said he's trying to get back in, so maybe he's having to go to a different device.
Okay.
But if you could keep an eye out for him, Steve.
Okay.
Thanks, Gary.
So if we move on to point 14, 14A, Green Underhill, recommended that our consultant is invited to a meeting with MCC MCA to discuss the report of the cost of to be confirmed. Following the meeting with MCC, consultant to produce a costed list of actions to be considered at the cost to be confirmed. Carrie, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, unfortunately, the report, I don't think, is it in our 99 pages?
Just wondering what report you were talking about. That's why I was going to ask. Oh,
yeah, it's the report from Red 6, which was looking at the environmental and sustainable options for the Underhill development, to ensure that we actually maximize the environmental opportunities and make sure that what we're building covers not just ticks the very, very limited building regs, but actually goes beyond that and actually complies with our climate emergency discussion. We have declared a climate emergency, and therefore we should be actually building up to that. I'm sorry that it wasn't included.
But this report hasn't been circulated yet. So,
it would appear not, no.
Okay, okay. Will?
Yeah, no, I think you were about to say that obviously if we haven't got the report, we can't do anything with it, I'm guessing, Chair, so we'll push it off to the next meeting, yeah.
Well, I was going to suggest that because we haven't, you know, I'm not being funny, but we haven't got any costings, we haven't seen the report. You know, yeah, but like, I think, you know, we need to see these, so we need to kick the recommendation back to...
Right, well, can I just say that based on that no decision, no building or anything else goes ahead until such time as we have actually included the recommendations from that. These are our project managers. These are the people who are actually managing the Underhill project on our behalf. So it would seem sensible to actually read and note their recommendations.
Chair, I have big issues with that. It's not in the agenda. That's not something.
It is in the agenda.
It's not. That is not what you just suggested. Is not in the agenda. You can't just make stuff up. It's not there.
Well, all right, then we take the decision now.
Well, you can't just add.
You
can't just change the agenda willy-nilly. With the the issue is the tender's about to go out, okay, for which we've just voted through the final part of the whole Underhill project. And then this is another thing, which is it's all done to building regs.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you. It's all done to building regs, and they'll try and be as environmentally friendly as possible. But budgets are a constraint. And if you're going to turn around and say to them, oh, well, we want X, Y, Z, who's going to fund those? And then that just puts huge delays on the project. So we can't go changing the rules like at the last minute. That's exactly what we're looking at doing. This should have been something which was tabled right at the start. I'm all for the green initiatives, but we can't just spring things in the 11th hour again and ask people to, you know, change the whole tender. It's done to building regs.
Okay.
This is not 11th hour. This has actually been raised months ago. Unfortunately, it's taken this long to actually persuade anyone to actually agree to having this done. We have had the report done. We've got the report. We've got the recommendations. They are extremely sensible and logical recommendations. If you're panicking about the fact that it's supposedly the 11th hour after 20 years, then can I suggest that then we include this in the reconvened AGM stroke special meeting that will be held at the end of July? And in the meantime, that Steve circulates the report to everybody.
Good idea.
Sarah?
Hi, yeah, if I don't know if Rebecca's still here, but she did mention a few months ago that she had mentioned to MCA and tried to have cover that subject, because building regs are very limited to how green they are. God knows, I know, I've gone through it recently, and getting them to do anything greener is difficult. But it's something that we have committed to with the climate emergency, and we'll look like enormous hypocrites if we're loaning all this money and being involved in a lease where we're not doing the best we can. So please, at least let us try and tick that box. Thank you.
Richard?
Yes, I know this was raised quite a long time ago in a meeting when you're talking about Underhill, and the reason it wasn't voted on then or put in then was because of lack of time. And I think people, me included, said, let's vote on this now, get it through, and this can be done later. So this has been raised some months ago.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I really don't see while we're discussing this, it's not on the agenda, no matter what Councillor Jones says. Here we are yet again. You know, a few on the council are trying to dictate terms to push something through. It's totally inappropriate. And to say that and be so dismissive of building regulations, and implication there is being dismissive of city council and their involvement in this. It's all very well the environmental committee having these ideas, but there is an element of practicality involved here, and there is an element of cost here. So I haven't seen any documentation, so I'm not prepared to vote on something that I don't know what I'm expected to vote on. Thank you.
Okay, Carrie.
Yeah, can I just point out, it actually is on the agenda. It's item 14. It's, you know,
No,
very
it's not.
clearly on the agenda.
No, it's not.
What we're suggesting is, because of the fact that unfortunately that report has not been circulated to everyone, that we defer a decision on it. And I'm sorry, but people make just wild assumptions that this is all going to cost money when nobody's actually read the report and actually looked at the recommendations from our project manager.
Okay, can I make a suggestion then that
Please.
Sorry?
Yes, please.
Yeah, can I make a suggestion that we refer this back to the joint working group to consider how we can plan in and write in our climate emergency and green agenda to the ongoing development of Underhill.
Yeah, I'm happy to agree that as long as it's recognised that no contracts are issued until such time as that has been done.
You can't do that.
I don't think we can do that, Carrie. I really
Well,
don't.
sorry, but what
We've
is the
just
point
signed
of
up to it.
discussing it
We
after
We've
the
just
contract
we've
being
just signed
given
up
out?
to an agreement.
We just
We've signed
agreed
up-
to a tripartite agreement. I don't think we, yeah.
How can we, what's the point in discussing it and then turning around and saying, well, it doesn't matter what we discuss because we've already agreed to ignore all environmental considerations anyway.
And nobody has said that, have they?
Yes,
Nobody
you
has
have.
said.
You just said that. You just said we can't change the decision that's already been made.
Did I at any time say that we will just ignore all environmental considerations? Did I, Carrie?
Well, no, what you said was
Did I
we've
say
already
that?
agreed it.
Did I say that we are going to ignore all environmental
No,
considerations?
but so how are
Oh,
you
thank
going
you,
to
I didn't.
ensure that they're included after a contract or a tender has already been put out?
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah,
How are
well,
you
yeah,
going
I'm
to
just
do
making the
that?
point that you were putting words into my mouth that I didn't say.
Yeah, but now I'm asking you a question. How are you
Gary,
going
come
to
on.
ensure that environmental considerations are included after a tender has already been issued?
Because we've got our monitoring officer on the whole project, and that is part of their brief.
Well, yes, they wrote the report.
Well, exactly.
So are they going to make sure that that's included? We have to agree it.
Well, this is what the joint working group will discuss with our monitoring officer, and that's why we've appointed them. Ian? Ian?
Who's the rude person?
Well, yes.
Board, not rude.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering whether I
just
should
signed up
say
to a
something.
code of conduct.
I'm just wondering if I should say something because, you know, the reactions here, not only to yourself, Chair, but the reactions to my particular comments, huff puffs, shouting and all the rest of it, it just makes a mockery of the meeting. What I would like to ask Councillor Jones is, what's happening about the recycling refuse bins? Have you given up on that project and moved to Underhill now?
Can we move on, Chair?
Okay. Sarah, I'll just bring you in on Pam, but like I really think we need to move on, is that there's no
Look,
resolution to this.
Chair, what I saw then was sort of obvious bullying. Carrie Townsend-Jones was making a point, and then Ian does his usual, runs in, as did Will. Can we just, I know we get heated because we're passionate about these things, but please, can we keep it decent? We don't want another visit from the Ombudsman on this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pam?
If we've got a project officer,
Ian, please.
if we have a project officer who is there to advise on every aspect of what this council is doing, well, that's got to start somewhere. And if we've missed the boat, yeah, but it's been said, I didn't know it was been said that this was brought up months ago and not acted upon. But from now on, whatever the project officer advises us, it's got to be part of whatever we plan and put in place. Otherwise, what's the point? They're there with the advice. She's an expert in this field. So you can't just dismiss it out of hand. Can we please make all chairs understand that any project, however large or small, if she has an input, then it has to be considered. That's what we're paying her for.
But in relation to this project, we have our own monitoring surveyor, and then our monitoring surveyor's role is to uphold our interests in this development. So it is imperative that we involve this monitoring surveyor in this issue. And what I'm suggesting, which seems to me quite a measured way of moving forward, is that we refer this issue back to the joint working group, who will raise it with our monitoring surveyor and discuss how best to take it forward.
Thank you, Martin. I did get all that, and I was with you on that all the way. I'm just saying from now on, trying to go forward, it has to be accepted this person has a role to play in every project we have. I got everything you said, Martin.
Okay. So can we, going forward, refer this back to the joint working group? Okay. All those in favour?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Right. Well, installation of bottle fillers. Recommended that budget EV1 2 bottle fillers purchased at a cost of to be confirmed each. I take it this is out of.
Yeah, we've actually, the cost has already been approved by full council last year for actually the installation. What we're discussing now is the cost for Swansea Council to actually lay the pipe work that's required in order to install them.
But we don't know what that cost is it?
Yes, we do. If you look, they're included in your 99 pages.
The pages, yeah.
Okay. I haven't got all the 99 pages in front of me, believe it or not.
Right, they are on page, they start on page 88.
Okay. Recommended that from a budget EV1, these bottle fillers are installed at the castle grounds and in Clyde Gardens at the cost of £1,700 and £1,400.
Yeah.
180 respectively. Okay.
Right, if I could just clarify, there are two options for each estimate from Swansea Council. In both cases, we would actually request that council agrees the higher cost because it actually enables the bottle fillers to be put in a far more visible and accessible location.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Any comments, observations? Rob?
As this is already covered from the funds from the Environmental Committee, can I just say we go straight to a vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if we go straight to a vote, all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay. Questions to the chair of the Environmental Wellbeing Committee? Any questions? No. So if we go on the recommendation of the Cultural and Tourism Wellbeing Committee, outdoor summer family activity, Councillor Rebecca Fogarty, Chair of the Community and Social Wellbeing Committee, is organising a family fun day at Fairwood Park during the school summer holidays to encourage more use of the park. The fun day will be COVID-19 compliant, therefore it may be necessary to arrange further events if the numbers attending are restricted. Councillor Fogarty thought that fun days would be held in multiple locations across all 4 wards of the council and has asked whether any funding could be provided for the event from the community parties budget held by the committee. Recommended that budget CL12 community parties, which has a budget of £500 per ward, can be used to support outdoor summer family activities. Okay, any comments, any observations?
Just to say that the money's already there, Mart. As it says, you know, £500 per ward for a community party, rather than doing one in the community centre, as the West Cross ward normally do. Rebecca wants to do an outdoor event geared more towards the young people. I think it's an excellent idea, and if we can get them throughout all the wards, even better.
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. Paul?
Yeah, just to inform Council that the opportunity to apply for grant funding from Swansea Council has arisen since the Culture and Tourism meeting. So a grant application has gone into Swansea Council for their Summer of Fun activity grant. That went in last week, and it was for I think just under 5,000. So that would cover all of the costs and would obviously save the cost coming from the council's budget.
That's lovely news. Thank you for that, Paul. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's a grand idea, splendid idea. And if nothing else, it's nice to see Fairwood Park being actually used for such an event. And perhaps it can be rolled out to some of the other wards. And if nothing else, of course, it will be interesting to see how well it is supported at Fairwood Road.
Okay, thank you for that.
The idea is to put it around the other wards as well, Ian. So
Yeah.
let you know.
Just to
Okay.
the grant application has gone in for 4 parties to be held in Highmead, Fairwood, Castleacre and Mumbles Hill.
Okay, thank you, Louise.
Castleacre?
Sorry. Yeah, because I'm new to the council, I don't know how to raise a grant. So who would be able to assist me with that? And obviously Rebecca would be in the same situation.
I'm sure Paul and Steve would be more than happy to help and advise you in relation to that.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, so if that's the case, can I put this straight to the vote now? All those in favour of it? Thank you. So,
Chair.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you're just about to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You got me. Time's running away from me. We need to put it to council that we're happy to continue for another half hour.
Half an hour?
At the most. I'm trying to get through it as quickly as I can.
Can we have
Those
a
in
5-minute
favour?
break?
Yeah,
Toilet
I need a break too.
No,
I'll be right back.
Just turn your camera off, Rob.
Well, have I got something coming up now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, why don't we make it 2 minutes and then we
2 minutes.
reconvene?
Okay, then 2 minutes.
Brilliant.
All right, have you proceed?
Martin?
Yeah.
I can't, on my iPad, I can't bring up the agenda and pictures. How much more have we got to do?
We're on point 17 and we've got to get to point 22.
Oh my God.
Well, this next point I think is going to take some time. I don't think the other points Vanna stand.
Martin, the small grants process, I presume that's to refer back to community, to JEC or something, isn't it? To come up.
Yeah, well, this I'm just thinking how best to deal with that. Like,
I would suggest that the best way is to actually combine it with the whole discussion about the committee structure.
Yeah.
Because it's actually directly linked in with that. So I think we just refer it back.
Yeah, and as I sort of said, I think, we maybe need to look at some of the things in the standing orders as well. So
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll read it out. Everybody back in the room now, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Chair, so you formally need to resolve to suspend standing orders to allow the meeting
yeah.
to continue.
okay, I will formally resolve to suspend the standing orders to allow the meeting to continue. All in favour?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, this is point B. The small and medium grants budget is held by the Community and Social Wellbeing Committee, and all grant applications received are reported to that committee for consideration before a recommendation is made to council. The Cultural and Tourism Committee felt that all grants should be reported to the relevant committees for consideration rather than being centralised under one committee. It was also felt that the applicant should be asked to identify the relevant committee for their application.
Oh.
The recommendation is that any grant application received should be reported to the relevant committee for consideration and recommending action to council, subject to the RFO advising how the existing budget could be disaggregated between the communities. Carrie, and then Pam.
Yeah. Can I recommend that this is referred back to be discussed along with the recommendations for the committee structure, because I think the two are pretty much integrally linked.
Yeah, okay.
I had something else to say, but in view of trying to push things on, I agree with Carrie. Let's give us another time to discuss it.
Okay, Rob wants to come in.
Yeah, I'm happy for it to be pushed back. Just very, very briefly, the reason I've asked for this is because, you know, the recent grant that came in about the Mumbles Railway thing, I think is an excellent idea, but it is a culture and tourism project, and it came to the Community and Wellbeing Committee, and I feel that, you know, the grant should be put to the relevant committees that decide that are involved in that particular field, because at the end of the day, these are the committees which are going to have to work on these projects. So I think that it makes sense.
But we decided to send it back.
We have. I'm just giving a brief thing as why I said it. But yes, I agree. It should be sent back.
Right.
Okay, then.
Heard.
Thank you for that, Rob. So the suggestion is that we send it back to the committee to look at structures and committee structures within the thing. All those in favour? Okay, that's passed. So questions to the chair of the Cultural and Tourism Wellbeing Committee? No questions. Items to the Joint Enabling Committee. Sorry, proposal to monitor the implementation of the Ground Rules Code of Practice. This is the point I talked about earlier, which is to consider a quote from Alan Thomas Consultancy for £250 per month to do that. As I sort of said, I really think we really do need, it's no good just having this code of conduct. We will need to monitor how it's implemented, how it's working, and maybe to formulate sanctions to ensure that it works in practice. Anybody got any other observations with that?
Did One Voice Wales sort this out as well, Martin? Did it come under their remit?
Well, the thing is, I'll defer to Steve on this, but my feeling is with One Voice Wales, they've already got that dispute resolving procedure that they've got, but as we've identified, it's not working.
So how much did we pay them, and now how much are we going to pay Alan on top of this? You know, we've got to decide which route we're going down, because we seem to be paying two separate people for the same work, or have I misunderstood it? If we paid One Voice Wales to get their advice on this, and now we're going to pay somebody else to get their advice on this.
Yeah, I think this is really rather more, isn't it, about actually the nitty-gritty of this particular council and how it relates with the code of conduct that we've just agreed. So I think it is slightly different to the One Voice Wales recommendations.
And also,
you know, can we just you know, do it, because I think everybody needs to sign up to this, and the only way that we're going to do that is if we have some very clear guidance for it.
And also, you know, just generally, we pay for membership of One Voice Wales. This is a specific piece of work. Steve?
Yeah, just to answer Pam's question, it's not normally part of what One Voice Wales do. We pay them for a number of reasons. It's most importantly, I suppose, from my point of view, for legal advice on procedures and so on, the law. They don't get involved with this level of dispute resolution. They have come up with the Ombudsman on the overall thing to do with the formal code of conduct, which we have discussed as being toothless. And if we want that amended, our representatives on One Voice Wales could bring that up with them. So this is not, you're not paying twice, is really what Pam's asking. This is
Thanks, Steve.
separate thing.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Hi. Wasn't Alan supposed to be dealing with bad behaviour when he first came on? He was supposed to come up and sort us. Remember when he interviewed us all?
Yeah.
And talked about. I don't think much happened there, did it? Really, we didn't get any better. Things actually seemed to deteriorate.
Well,
you know, there was.
Surely that's what led to the code of conduct that we've just signed up to today.
Right. Okay.
That's what the point of those interviews were, you know, and Alan then had a number of other meetings with us where he fed back what people were saying to him. From that, he's formulated the code of conduct. And this is exactly what we've been talking about today, that we've now got this code of conduct, which is circulated as part of this, the agenda pack, which all the councillors have now agreed that they will sign up to. And what we are talking about now is that we are going to monitor and evaluate how councillors adhere to or do not adhere to the code of conduct, and then bring a report back on that, and then looking at what possible sanctions we could put in place. And as Steve has identified, a bit of a minefield really, because there's only certain sanctions available to us. So I think that's where we are. So, you know, it's part of an ongoing process.
I just feel that there's
all this money and nothing happens.
Okay. Well, that's where we are.
That's my concern. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we haven't got a proposal there, have we, Steve? It's just a consideration.
It's not a proposal because no one was proposing it. It was put on the agenda by me. But you're considering whether to accept the quote. So the resolution would be if you want to accept the quote.
Well, are we happy to accept that quote?
Yeah.
All those in favour? Okay, I think that's carried. Good. And then this next one again is from Alan Thomas to deliver 2.5-hour training sessions on theory of change approach to evaluation at a total cost of £400. Budget G9 training course and associated costs. Who has this come from? Has it come from the JEC, Steve?
No, it's come from me as clerk.
Oh, sorry.
Just to very briefly explain, our community plan and our activities are based on the theory of change. I think it's important for our staff to understand a bit more about it because it will help them deliver what you want in a more effective way.
Okay, so it's part of staff training. Sarah?
Hi, yeah, again, do you really think this is going to be useful, Steve?
Yes, sorry, that's why I proposed it, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so that is the proposal. Carrie, did you want to come in?
No, just how do we actually encourage people to actually turn up? The biggest issue with all this training has been the people who, you know, maybe that's being facetious, but the people who most need it are the people who don't bother to turn up. You know, is there anything we can do to actually get people to come?
This is staff training we're talking about, yeah. Pam?
Because usually I'm already training with City and County of Swansea and didn't want to repeat it. That's why I haven't turned up for the last few, because I've done it already.
Sorry, just clarify, this is just for staff, not for councillors?
No, it's for councillors as well, I think.
No, it's for staff. It's for staff.
Oh, it is just for staff.
Yeah.
Can we come along as well? Because I think some of us might find it really useful.
Well, if there's a big I'll talk to Alan about numbers because it may be that he can do a session for councillors as well.
Yeah, I thought we had.
Yeah.
I thought we had talked to Alan about numbers, and I thought he was saying he could manage about 6 to 8.
Yeah.
We shouldn't change the committees go, because they manage
Yeah,
the change in their
That's a
committee.
good idea. If we make it for staff and chairs.
Well, as I say, I'm not convinced that I would prefer. There's 4 staff, and he's saying between 4 and 6 is the ideal.
No, 6 to 8, Martin said.
Yeah, well, don't quote me on that. I just, you know, I seem to remember a conversation that Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Can we deal with what's on the agenda, please? This is for staff training. It's got nothing to do with councillors, other than the fact, are we in favour of this facility being afforded to the staff, please?
Yeah, okay. So as I sort of said, it is on the agenda of staff training. So can we consider it as such? And as I sort of said, Steve is in favour of it because he feels that the staff want it, and I'm assuming Paul does as well. Did you want to come in?
No, I'm just saying yes.
Yes. Okay. So
Can we
I put it-
just add, can we please have this for councillors as well?
Well, we'll explore with Alan the prospect, because I know Rebecca Fogarty in particular has said to me that she would really appreciate it herself.
Yeah.
So can we just put it to the vote that we're in favour of it? All those in favour? Okay. So then the banner stand. Consider response to the refusal of planning permission. Where are we going to go with this?
Oh, we need to appeal it.
Where are we with this, Steve?
We are, as the notice says, we've applied for planning permission and they've refused it. So we can, I suppose your choice is to accept it and get rid of it, to appeal it, or to apply for planning in an alternative location. I know Councillor Philip Reason did have a look at an alternative location with a resident, so.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I turn myself off there.
Yeah.
Trigger happy with you. Yeah, I've had a complaint, and a consistent complaint about it, as I know a lot of you know, about this from a local resident. I've discussed it with some of you. I did look at an alternative site nearer the petrol station, which I think might be worth considering. It might be a little bit more visual as well, but it's away from the houses. So I was just going to suggest that maybe we applied for that position there, just closer to the petrol station, not in front of the houses. I'm just trying to sort of, find the ideal balance between, obviously not getting the residents' objections, but also having a good prominent position where the sign can be seen.
Okay, thanks for that. That sounds good. Ian?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is a most unfortunate situation that yet again MCC finds itself in. It's highly embarrassing. What was the cost to install it? What is the cost to relocate it? And will there be proper resident consultation on the matter if it felt it was necessary?
Thank you for that, Ian. Steve, did you want to respond to that? You might have the numbers.
Yeah, just as a point of information for councillors aren't aware, this is a long-term project. We dealt with an officer from Swansea Council throughout, who came up with the design, gave us the location. It went to council and it was asked, do we need planning permission? We asked that of Swansea Council officer who was doing it, and they said no, because it's below a certain height. It might be embarrassing, but I really don't think it's embarrassing to us.
Okay, then look, I've got a few people who wanted to speak, but I think we all wanted to get to our beds before too long. So if I can carry Pam and Sarah and then maybe we can.
Yeah,
wrap it up.
sorry, it just be, you know, because I've sort of been involved in this. It does concern me that actually, you know, the needs of 16,000 residents are being dictated by one individual resident, which is literally what it is. It is one individual resident. However, if Pip has found an alternative location that he, and I trust him completely on this, feels is suitable, then I think we should agree that we apply to Swansea Council to move it to the location that Pip has suggested, and hopefully that'll be agreed and we can then move it and we can actually get back to being able to use it.
Okay, I know. Pam, do you want to come in? Ian wants to come in as well.
I trust Pip's judgment on this completely. Let's just go with what Pip thinks we should do and just go for it.
Okay, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That's just the type of talk that I expect from Councillor Jones. It's totally inappropriate to quote 16,000 people, and it's just one individual that is put a complaint in about this banner stand. You know, it's just totally inappropriate. You're whipping up another scenario that we've already had at the skate park. You know, blaming it all on one individual.
Can we move on, Chair?
You know, pardon? I'm sorry?
I'm asking if we can move on.
Can
you can have your say when I finish. Thank you, Councillor Erasmus. This is yet again a situation, Chair. You try and have decent dialogue and you get interrupted. Anyway.
Sorry, Ian, I could see that there was a kerfuffle going to start, Chair, and it's late at night, and rather than have a kerfuffle, let's try to move on.
Pam, I think it's very important that when another councillor speaks, even if you disagree with what they are saying, that you let them finish. You know, we all disagree about certain things at certain times.
I'm not
disagreeing. Listening in silence while they talk, I think, is respectful. Could I bring Louise in, please?
Yeah, my observation from this, obviously the new AGM meeting, I've not been to one of these before, is there's quite a few councillors that have a lot to say and they don't allow other people to actually have a say. So we are in a democratic world, and I really do think that everybody should be respected. It's not hard. We're all grown-up people. And I think Ian's got a perfect example there. He was trying to talk and people were over-talking him. Now, can we, for once, just be respectful of each other? Just be kind. It doesn't take a lot, and everybody calm down. That's all I'm asking.
Okay,
Thank you very
Louise,
much.
thank you for that. And hopefully that's what we're going to address in the code of conduct. Sarah?
Yes, Ian Scott, once again, just talks over people. He makes noises whilst you're trying to speak. He was doing this while we were sitting around a table in meetings. We got used to having to talk, be more robust just to get our points out. And I think we've all fallen into bad behaviour, but we really have to pick out the people who started this off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. But I think we're generating far more heat than we are light at the moment. Rebecca Singh?
I would just like to say, wherever you want to take this, I've never had a problem with Ian over talking, okay, of me, you know. There are people throwing a lot of weight around, but I think if we can all be, as you said, Martin, just a little bit patient, I'll be all right with that, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Phil Reason?
Yeah, just to go back to the relocation site, Steve and I discussed, or at least I put to Steve where I thought would be an appropriate site. So I don't know if they're going to accept that yet, but it's worth a go. So is that okay if we do that?
Yeah, yes. I think that's a good proposal.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's worth a try, perhaps to sort of kind of compromise the whole thing, if you like, you know.
Well, I think that's a very good idea. I think that's a very good idea, Pip, because, you know, rather than us maybe appeal this and then they sort of say, well, you know, they've already turned us down. maybe if we can just approach them and sort of say, look, we're thinking of moving it down to this site. Would you be amenable to that? Would planning permission be forthcoming? Because that'll save us going round in a circle over and over again.
Yeah, I'll discuss it a bit further with Steve first, and then we'll do that little approach to them.
Thanks, Pip.
Okay, thanks for that, Pip. Pam,
Excellent.
I think you'll find that under the rules of etiquettes of meetings, then somebody is allowed to ask the chair if one might move the meeting on rather than staying where they are. I've happened before. I'm sure it's within the etiquette rules to address the chair and ask if something could be moved on. It's not rude, it's trying to apply the rules.
Thank you, Pam. Ian, did you want to come in?
Yes, I think it makes practical sense if what Pip was proposing. However, we have to establish, I would still like to know what it costs to put the banner stand up. I would still like to know what it will cost to relocate it. And it's the chicken and egg scenario. You don't go putting up a stand without planning permission. So for goodness sake, don't go doing the same mistake again.
I think the clerk makes clear that he acted under advice and instruction from City and County of Swansea. He acted with their advice all the way through when he put it up. He didn't break any rules.
Okay, Pam.
It was a while ago. Sorry, I know it was a while ago. Perhaps nobody was here then.
Okay, Ian, I think we can provide you with that information in a written reply. I will pass this on to the clerk and Paul, and we can provide this information to you. But I really think, as I sort of said, a lot of this discussion is generating a lot more heat rather than light, because what we're talking about is relocating a stand at the bottom of Males Road. So, Sarah, you wanted to come back in again? No, you just got left the thing up, is it? Okay, so on that note, I think we've agreed that Pip will explore with Steve the possibility of relocating the stand to near the petrol station. Anyway, so questions to the chair of the Joint Enabling Committee. Steve, you're on mute, Steve.
Sorry, you didn't put that to the council, but what I was going to suggest is the motion you could consider agreeing is that planning permission be applied for at the proposed site nearer to the petrol station, subject to consultation with neighbours. So if Pip and I's consultation with the neighbours and they're happy with that location, is fine. You're giving us permission to go to the next stage, apply for planning.
Very, very good suggestion, Steve. So can I put this to the council now? All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay. So questions to the chair of the Joint Enabling Committee? Any questions?
No.
No. Questions to the chair of the Premises Committee? We've already had that. Questions to the chair of the Economic and Wellbeing Committee? Ian? Any questions? Questions to the chair of the Community and Social Wellbeing Committee? Okay, if there are no questions, I thank you all for your time. This is for me. We're all saying, have a nice evening.
Thank you, Martin.
Cheers,
Okay,
Martin.
bye-bye, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Martin. Bye.
Bye-bye.